There we go. Okay, so while we're always doing these things, I'm going to continue to always reinforce things. Hold on. Why does the littlest dog always have the biggest attitude? So I'll constantly reinforce how we set things up. So again, we're going to go new part. We'll get that going. Everybody can see my screen, right? Okay. So again, I like to get my background set. Very first thing is what measurements am I working in? For the sake of this, it's easier for me just to do inches. So I want to make sure that I go in, go to my options. Whoops, units, inches. There we go. I like to turn on my work planes. Again, my origin, can't turn it on. It says it's hidden or it's not hidden, so I can't really turn it on. If you can't see something, go to the view, display, view, hide show, drop down to the origins. So, okay, so we kind of went over determining what your 0, 0 was, where you should put stuff. Even in doing simple exercises, get used to doing that just so we can get into that repetitive habit. So for this, I'm going to basically make a widget. I don't know where we'll end up. I'm not making an actual product because I don't want to worry about thinking whether or not I'm building it right. I want to make sure I communicate to you what the tool I'm using and what are the various features within that tool. So if I get going too quick, or you say, well, wait a second, what did you do there? Or why would you do that if I don't explain it? Just turn off your mic or turn on your mic and yell at me. So again, I'm going to go to my front. I want to do a sketch. That automatically takes me there.
Tutorial?
I'm sorry, pardon?
Are you going to record that?
Yes, yes. I've hit the record button. We're recording. Yes, we're recording. So, but thank you for asking before we get too far in. So for this, again, we've talked about it before. Under the sketch commands, you can see where I've got a rectangle, and I've got so many different options for how I want to build it. Now, center, if you want to lock that center of that rectangle, it's going to create that relationship right to the middle, the coincident, so that I can then go this way. And the nice thing about that is if I adjust it, it does it via mirror. Even so I can just kind of push, pull, get the size right. The other option is if I come out and I go from corner to corner. Now the thing with that is I only control one side at a time. So really, it comes down to what's going to be beneficial for you. What do you think will work better? If you determine that this doesn't work, what you can always do is delete these lines, because these are the lines that are saying this side and this side should always be the same. So now I've done that, I only can move one. Same with, we'll go into the other ones, but you've got line, which obviously is a simple line. You have a center line. Center lines are used as either reference geometry or as an axis or as a point to mirror things around. So one of the things I always suggest is go through and play with things to see what they all do a little bit different. Some of them are self-explanatory. We'll get into splines later on, because in order to do splines right, there's considerable more information that you need to know about that. So we're going to say this is all we need from the sketch. I'm not even going to bother to dimension it. Actually, I am going to dimension it because I need to know, is it a 0.25 inch square or not? So hold on one second. I got to get my kid to let the dog out. There. So we're going to exit out. Now we've got our sketch. We're going to come over and go extrude. So right off the bat, it says, what are you extruding from? So we're going to select our sketch plane or our sketch. You can do it from a surface, a vertex, or an offset. And I'll walk through those in a second. Blind, like you guys saw, was just dragging it to whatever distance you want. We can do vertex, which is up to a point. So I could snap on another object. And I'll show that as we go. We can do up to a surface, up to a body, or up to a midplane. Midplane basically means you can see how that's where my sketch is. That creates the midplane, and it extrudes it in the same direction on both sides. Oops. You can also come in and add draft if you want. And you can kind of see. So you guys are learning about manufacturing process right now. Most all parts have to have draft to come out of the tool. Depending on how big the part is or the type of manufacturing is going to determine your draft. Or you can use the drafts purely for a visual effect. That's up to you. So for now, let's just leave that at 0. We'll do the midplane. So now we've got our object. We've got our first solid body. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw something else, and I'm going to join it up to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another reference plane, because let's say I want to start the part off over here. I'm going to go Insert, Reference Geometry, Plane, because what I want to do is create a new plane. Since I clicked on that plane, it automatically assumes that's my reference. I'm just going to move it. Oh, hold on. We'll move it out here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a sketch on there. And we'll just do a quick circle. Again, I can snap. So when I come back and I exit out of here, we're going to go back to the extrude command. Now notice how it automatically grabbed that sketch. That's because I already had my sketch highlighted here. So by going to extrude, it already knows that, hey, that's what you've got. That must be what you want to extrude. If I don't have it selected, then I have to go in and tell it what to select. Here, I'm telling it to select the circle that's within the sketch. Here, I'm telling it to select the entire sketch. So right off the bat, I'm extruding off the sketch plane. So let's take a look. I can go and say, well, you know what? Let's extrude off of a surface. So then I select that surface, and now what it's doing is it's starting at this point versus starting at the plane. So I can change where it comes from versus just on that plane, just on off that plane. So let us then go, I can do it off a vertex. So a vertex again is a point. So if I was to grab this point back here, which is a vertex, then it's going to start off that back point. So you can control various areas of where it's going to extrude. Offset, what that means is I can offset it from that plane. So right now, there's the plane. I can have it start at a different point other than that plane. So those are kind of all the different areas. So for now, let's do from the sketch plane. Next, we've got direction. We already talked about this is kind of blind and it's just whatever distance you want. Through all, no, that's more of a cut. Let's go up to surface. What I can do is I can select this surface and it automatically extrudes. So I'm not typing in a dimension. If I come and I go up to body, this is a body, it'll just go up to there. Now, here's the key thing and one of the more important things between using face, up to a face or up to a body, and using blind. So if I come up here and I'm going to go blind, and I'm just going to eyeball it and I'm going to say, you know what? Okay, excellent. I want to extrude this up to here because I want it to join. I'm going to say I want to merge the results so that these two items become one. And I'm going to do that. And now I've got one solid body. Well, I'm going to come back and say, oh, you know what? I like where this ends, but I don't like how wide this is. So let me come back and I'm going to adjust that box. And I'm only going to have it that wide. So I'm going to update. And now you can see that because I extruded this and I just dragged it into the box, now when I go back and I change this box, I've made it smaller than the length I extruded the piece. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I take a different approach and I say, well, I'm modeling this and I always want this to be part of this face. I don't ever want it not to be. If I come back and say, I'm going to extrude up to a surface, I select this surface and I hit yes. This is where the intelligence comes in. It knows that no matter where that surface ends up, this should meet it. So I can then come back and say, oh, you know what? Let me edit this. I want to make it a little bit smaller. I want to make it just a wafer thin. I don't know why you would, but whatever. It will automatically bring that up to that face. So that's a nice way of being able to keep things connected. Questions? How is the video performance? Are we lagging? Am I cutting in and out? No? Going good?
It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, it hasn't lagged for me.
Okay. That may be a switch then. We'll test it with the next class. If that's the case, then what I'll do is I'll set up reoccurring meetings for us. Okay, so that's kind of our extrude commands. We can also do a separate direction. So if I wanted to go in the other direction, and some of these, it's going to be one of those things, well, here it is. It's like, great. When would I use that? Why would I need that? You know, we'll get into that as we build other models, and I'll show or demo, hey, you want to do this because, or here's where it's useful. Right now, it's just basically showing you the different commands. Okay, so now we've got our, I don't know what widget. What I'm going to do next is we're going to do the Revolved and Boss base. So Revolve is exactly that. Think of it as revolving around an object or a lathe or something of that nature. We're going to come in and we'll go to the front plane again. Because if I go I'm going to draw a sketch. And what I want to do is I want to draw the profile of what I'm going to revolve. So let's say we're just doing a vase. I need to draw it through the center line, what I'm going to revolve. Then let me just kind of quickly draw the shape I want to do. So here, I'm going to use a 3-point arc, 1 point, 2 point, 3-point. And this is our simple little cup. Now, even though this line is there, this is what's called a open sketch. It does not create a fully closed off section. In order to use the revolve command, this sketch is currently open, non-thin revolution, which means that it would not be a solid. Now, you can say, would you like the sketch to be automatically closed? If I say no, what happens is it closes it anyways. By doing that, it makes it a thin object. So what it does is it kind of automatically shells it. But that may not be what you want, because I'm not controlling how it's going to shell. I'm not controlling how the top is. If you want to create an object that has a completely empty hollow, great. But if you want to do something different, you've got to make sure that is a closed sketch. And by a closed sketch, it means click on here. Now, if it is a dotted line, that is referred to as reference geometry or dashed line. It does not view that as a closed line. That's just, you know, like when you're doing concept sketching and you do a hidden line, that's not going to act as a line. So you need to make sure it's solid. So now let's hit enter. Well, it disappeared because it's trying to do a revolved thin, which that's not. So we got to come back and basically say, okay, hold on. Edit the feature. We don't want this to be a revolved thin. We just want it to be here. It's going to ask, what is the axis of revolution? So we've selected that line. We want to do 360 degrees blind. Our contour is this. Why is it not doing what I want it to do here? Oh, hold on. There. Oh, now see, I can't change it back from being a revolved thin because it's still saying it's a revolved thin. So in order for me to go back and do it, I have to actually delete that command. And the reason for that is because the sketch does not match what the command is. It's no longer a thin. The moment I closed that off. So if I come back and go revolve, I'll select the sketch. It automatically knows where the center line is. It gives me that full revolve. It says, do you want to merge results or not? Merge means it's an automatic union. So the two become one. Well, they're two separate spaces. In this sense, I want a separate body. So I'm going to go in and just say no. And then once I select now, you can see here too, I can do it so that it only revolves a certain amount of degrees. Again, it's a quick way. So let's say you only wanted to go 45 degrees. You could just do a wedge. Again, it's a matter of what are you modeling, what are you sketching, and looking at what the best way to build it is. So let's just leave that at 360. So now we've got our revolve. This is actually, you can do a lot of complex shapes, easier than other things. So I will show you a revolve. We'll do a complex shape here, or more complex. Let's go sketch. For this, we are going to use a spline. So we've got Mr. Peanut here. I'll just revolve that around there. Again, I want to make sure I finish that off because I want it to be a solid object. Exit out. Hit our revolve. Want to make sure merge is turned off. So there you can see I can start getting much more of a sculpted surface, or something that looks like you would have used that on a lathe. Pretty quick, pretty simple, single line. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to jump to the Lofted Boss base to start with. Okay? Let's do this. So a Lofted Surface is taking multiple sketch planes and basically stringing them together. So what I'm going to do here is, let's hide all these objects. I'm going to create a series of planes so that I can create a series of profiles. Oops, let's do this top one. So now I want to have them, we'll say, approximately 3 inches apart. I can also do multiple at once. So I'm going to say I want to do 5. Let's just hide these ones. Now what I'm going to do is on each one, I'm going to try to duplicate or get something similar as that to that revolve. Give me 1 second. No one's home. No one's paying attention to the dog. Come on, dog. So in order to create that shape, let me pull up Sketchbook here. What I'm going to do is I want to take a series of circles. Let's do this. And on each plane, I'll draw a different circle. And this is no different than how you'd be taught to sketch an ellipse. And then we'll go like that to get that shape there. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going to say I want to draw a surface from this one to this one to this and then to this. And it's going to basically do the contours. So what makes this up is circle here, circle here, circle here, circle here. Let's go into SolidWorks. We'll do a sketch. We'll exit out of there. Yeah. Okay. Now let's do the last one here. That one's not even a circle, but that's fine. So what we can do is we can look at this. We're going to go to our Lofted Boss base. And keeping in mind, all these commands make a solid. So it's an object with mass versus a surface that we'll show later. So what it says is, right off the bat, what are your profiles? These are the different profiles that I wanted to go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my shift key because I'm going to select multiple and then select them in the order that I want. And you can see that it automatically kind of lofts from one to the other. Well, that's a straight edge. Now that I loft to this one, in order to do that, you can kind of see that it's got a curve and go around. So then it's just going to make the natural progression of what that shape should look like going from edge to edge. Hit select, and now you've got your options or your lofted surfaces. There's different things you can do with the lofted surfaces. So if I come back and let me just delete this, one of the things that is very tricky that happens a lot is when I do a lofted surface and I select here and then I select here. See how there's this green dot? That's trying to communicate where the start and end is so that they're lining up. If I go too far away, so if I try to loft up to here and I select there, see how it goes all the way to the other side? It's trying to twist it as it goes. If that happens, you can simply click on the dot, drag it back, and you're getting that shape. Now, all I'm doing is letting the positions of these circles control that shape. Fix that up. Again, since this model has history, I can come back and say, well, you know what? I want to edit that sketch. I'm going to shrink it up a little. Oh, whoops. That's right, that's an ellipse. I'm going to change the shape a little. And I'm going to hit update. Or I can come back and say, you know what? That's 12 inches. I want it to be taller, so let's go 16 inches. So the outside profile, I don't have any control over. Basically, it's controlled by this circle to this circle to this circle to that. Now, let's say I wanted to have more control over what it does in between those lofts versus the computer just figuring out what it needs to do. I'll come back, let me delete that. What I can do is I could create another sketch, and let's do this on the right plane. And I'm going to give it another point of control. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, I want to draw a spline. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that these all intersect. Oh no. No, it's not doing what I want. Bear with me for a second here. Okay. Let me do this, because I think it's messing up that. So I'm going to do a sketch on the right plane. And I'm going to put it there. Put it there. I'm going to use what's called the pierce command to make sure that it's touching that sketch. Now, you saw what happened when I lofted that, and it just kind of made its natural contours, and I had to create all these extra planes. What I can also do is come in, let's exit out of that, and say, let's loft this. I want to go from this profile up to this profile. Since there's nothing in between, it just does a straight line. But then I'm going to say, I want to do a guide curve. And for that guide curve, I want to use that. Oh, it already selected it. I want to use that. I'm going to hit check. Now, it didn't do anything because that guide curve is a straight line, so it's not giving it any extra information. But I can come in, edit that sketch, and go, okay, well, I want to have this bow out more. Now it's only going to go on one side. Now you can see that I'm starting to control, it follows that guide curve. So instead of just going straight up, I now can control it to do a little bit on a curve. So basically the guide curve is basically, hey, I want you to start at this circle. I want you to end at this circle, but I want you to follow this path. That gives me a little bit more freedom to do some contoured shapes or surfaces that I want. The one thing that you're seeing here in this method is, and we kind of talked about this, the other software, I'm not really pushing, pulling. Like I've got to go to a 2D view, a 2D sketch, create it, get the solid form, and go back. So it's not that natural sculpting tool. But as we go further in, and we've got our design in front of us, then we'll be able to do this easier. This is why I say SolidWorks, if you don't know what you're designing, SolidWorks isn't great for, oh, let me just make this a little bit thinner. Let me push and pull this. That's not the way it is. You have to kind of have your thought worked out more. But that doesn't mean you can't. So I think I talked to you guys about this, but I definitely talked to the other class. Have you all heard that you shouldn't be going into CAD until you have your design fully done? Have you been told that yet? No, not really? Okay, so you may hear it. You shouldn't be going into CAD to create a final model without having at least an idea of your design. I could take this, create this surface, bring it out, and I'm going to then use this as a sketch template and sketch over it to make life easy so I don't have to draw this every time. Or I'm going to do the series of ellipses. That's using your CAD to help you develop your design. We'll go into things later where I'll show you, hey, sometimes you have engineering hard points, so you've got to sketch within a box. You don't have this freedom of, hey, your project for today is to design a coffee maker. And you sit down and come up with whatever coffee maker you want. No, here's the internal engineering components. Here's the package size. Here's the box size it needs to fit in. Design a coffee maker with those control dimensions. If that's what you've got, you really need to do some kind of 3D modeling to get a base fit and feel. Now, we're using circles. We could use lofts for rectangles, basically any 2D shape we want. We're still on features here. So we kind of covered over the different types of profiles. You can have as many profiles as you want. Guide curves, you can have as many guide curves as you want. The more guide curves, the more complex the surface, but the more control you can have in it. So if I was to come in and go back, let's delete this. I've got the one guide curve there. I'm going to come back in and I'm going to edit this sketch. And I'm going to put another guide curve in over here. So same thing, I want to make sure it's touching the circle. So with that, it's called the pierce command. Now, before, both circles followed that shape. Well, now I'm going to have a guide command that's set. Hold on one second. Come on, people. So you can kind of see, and this is wireframe modeling. I'm creating the wireframe that's going to control what my model looks like. So now I can come in, I'll do my loft command again. Let's exit out of that. So again, my profiles, here to here. Guide curve, I'm going to use this first one. Oops. Okay, here's something. I can have multiple guide curves in a sketch, but in order to do that, if I select this as a guide curve, there's another sketch in there. So it says, well, are you done selecting? I can say yes. Then I can select the next guide curve. I can come over here, select that, and say yes. Now you can see I've got more control over it. So now I'm controlling both sides. I could do a whole series of guide curves all the way around here and get a much more contoured shape. I can also come back. Let's just show that sketch. I can edit that sketch. And now I'm starting to get a different shape. So I could do this, and I could almost create the profile for a shoe. This is where it's really helpful, and especially when it comes time to do surfacing, wherein, you know, you start doing your contour line. So if you've got this surface, well, if that's my contour line, that's going to be the profiles that you want to loft through to get your surface. Does that make sense? So when I'm doing concept sketching in that, it may be a beautiful sketch. When it comes time to me to model it, I'll actually do an overtop and I'll draw in all my contour lines so I can get a better understanding of the form that I'm trying to create. And that gives me a plan of what my surfaces and my sketches are going to look like in SolidWorks. Okay. Questions about the Lofted Boss feature? Pretty straightforward at this point. You guys will eventually. Oh, okay. You guys will have more questions once you actually start using them. But excellent. Now let's go with a swept boss or a swept base. So let me turn this off. I need to. What is that? For my next class, I think I got to switch over because I use Sketchbook a lot, and it's being a pain for me to try to sketch with a mouse. So, okay, that's just a thought for next class. What I'm also going to do is come in, and I want to hide all these sketches so that it's not as much of a pain. So Swept Boss is exactly that. It is a simpler version of the Loft. Because what you're basically doing is you're saying, I have one profile and I want to follow it along this shape or this path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, exit. We'll draw on here and I'm going to draw whatever shape I want. It could be a circle, it could be something funky. So let's just do something funky. So that's my profile. I want that shape. And you know what? I'm then going to come in and on the right hand side or the right plane, I want, what happened there? Oh, I'm going to draw the path that I want. So I'm going to sketch, right plane, I want to make sure that starts on there. So I'll exit out. I don't know if this will actually bend around because it's probably too big. But I'm going to come in, I'm going to say feature, sweep. I want to sweep this profile along this path. Now it can't do it. Point path start for open path. That must mean an intersection. Okay. So I've got to actually have the path touching one of these dots. So let's go. That's not going to do it for me. Hold on, bear with me 1 second. Come on. No, it's not going to want that. I don't got that closed. Sometimes when you're doing things and you're just trying to do them rough and quick, it doesn't work because you're giving it constraints that it can't do. Okay, there, that should work. So we're going to do Swept Boss. We're going to do this as our profile. And I want it to follow this path. So, and you can see, you can only do what works within physics. If I do this, it looks good, but this gray area means that it's kinking on itself. So let's say I was just to do a quick cross section. You can see how I've got that weird little surface. And that is because I'm trying to sweep something around a bend that is too tight. So these are the things where you'll hear me say a lot, even though we're just kind of showing off tools. What I always do is build, evaluate, refine. So every time I build something, when I'm going fast, you'll see me build it, and then you'll see me do this. because I'm looking to see if there's something wrong. You know, I'm going to say, oh, got that problem. Let me come back. I'm going to refine it. I'm going to rebuild it. There, everything looks good, and I've got it. Now, oh, stop. So there I can loft that. So if we're looking at that, what I basically just lofted was the handle for a coffee mug. So I can come back and I can do this. I can say, okay, well, that's the style, that's the handle I want. Well, now let me go to a right plane and I'm going to draw a center line. Whoops, right plane. We'll revolve that. Wants to know what I'm going to revolve it around, so I'll select that line there. Here, I want to merge the results because I want this handle and this to be one. There I've got my coffee mug with a extremely small handle that maybe you could be lucky if you put your pinky through it. But now you can start seeing how you can combine the things. So that's kind of the swept command. We'll get into more details as we start talking about tangencies, paths, how we want it to start and how we stop it. That kind of starts getting into the form development as well. And creating the scenarios on how do you want it to blend with things. We'll also dive into, at another time, what does tangency mean, what does curvature mean, and how these things affect your model as well as your design. Okay, so there, we're not going to worry about boundary base right now. Why don't we take a quick 10-minute break so you guys can go to the washroom or whatever, and then we'll dive in and go through the cut commands and then move into the fillets and things. Okay? Awesome. Let me pause the video.